We're back live tonight on In Focus, and thanks for staying on. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is expected to visit the scene where a gunman shot and killed at least 8 people. The suspect, who is believed to have acted alone, was in turn shot and killed by U.S. police after he fired at officers outside the Allen Premium Outlet Mall. The governor labeled the shooting as an unspeakable tragedy, offering assistance to local authorities. At least 7 people have since been hospitalized with varying injuries. The youngest of the victims is a 5-year-old who is receiving medical attention at a local hospital.
We activated our active attack integrated response. Our rescue task force teams found 7 deceased individuals on scene. We transported 9 individuals to the hospital, to area trauma facilities. Of those that we transported, 2 have since died, 3 are in critical surgery, and 4 are stable.
All right, for more of this, we're joined now by Wits University International Relations Professor John Stremlau. Prof, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. Is this last or latest wave of mass shootings sparking any kind of new conversation in the U.S. around gun access?
You know, this has been so familiar for so long, and it is the fact that this is the 199th mass killing this year in the United States. A mass killing is anything over 4 people. You don't include the shooter. But Governor Abbott is talking about this terrible tragedy, and we're praying for the family. But he's the guy who has made it easier to get AR-15s without a background check. He is the guy that's made it easier for this fellow to go into the Allen mall, discount mall, and just open fire. And we don't know who it is that committed this crime, but we do know that last weekend a gunman killed 5 people in Cleveland, Texas, near Houston. And on Monday, a sex offender, a registered sex offender, still had a gun and fatally shot 6 people and his wife and children in near Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then on Wednesday, in a medical building in Atlanta, my old time home, another guy opened fire, and they're still looking for the suspect. So it's just appalling, but I want to make the point that this is not an indictment on democracy general. It's an indictment on the flawed democracy that is the United States of America. And it all flows from the Second Amendment of the Constitution, a well-regulated militia being necessary to secure a free state. The right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, that was back in 1789.
Is it due for a reform, that particular policy?
Well, you see, the problem is that the rural male voter who advocates guns, advocates abortion, so, guys want to bear arms.
All right, network challenges there with Professor John Stremlau, who is with Wits University, talking matters of international relations. Of course, the latest round of mass shootings in the United States. Prof, you were talking about the type of person who would want to use these guns, which I suppose raises the question once again. In South Africa, you would know, whenever we speak of gun violence of this nature happening, be it in Gqeberha, be it in Soweto, be it in KwaZulu-Natal, they say South Africa is a violent country, has a nature of being violent. What do they say in the United States? Is this a culture thing, or is this a policy thing that needs to be reformed?
It's both. It's both, but because Dianne Feinstein, who is the aging senator from California, sponsored an assault weapon ban, and it was passed by the Congress, and then the Congress allowed it to expire because the Congress became more taken over by extremist right-wing MAGA crowd that Donald Trump reflects. Guys who are insecure and resentful of the increasing diversity of America. And while the Second Amendment was not a function of slavery per se, it did sort of abet the repression of blacks in the South. And it now is seen to be necessary to arm yourself. Why? Because of the danger that the pluralism of America is becoming a threat to the Make America Great Again crowd, the white racists.
And is there something that Joe Biden is pushing for that he thinks can be done quickly that could make a difference?
No, there's nothing that he can do quickly to make a difference. He wants to see the assault weapon ban, but you've got a very narrowly divided Congress, and you've got a election coming up in 2024. If Biden wins a large mandate, he will do something about gun violence, and certainly the public is overwhelmingly, the polling shows 70% of the public want to see background checks, want to see ban on assault weapons, want to see some end to this craziness. There are more guns in America than there are people.
Yeah, I mean, everybody believes, as you put it, they should have a gun, and everybody is going for a gun, and because they believe that they should certainly have one. How much, whenever wicked and evil things of this nature happen, one always thinks it's either somebody is looking, they see that this is wrong and something needs to happen, and the reason why they are not acting is because it's messing up with their cash. Is somebody benefiting from this financially?
Well, of course, the gun makers do, but that's really a small issue in this case. There are other problems facing America where money really does matter, but here it's identity, it's control over your destiny, and there's no regard for the dangers that this poses for others. It's symptomatic of Donald Trump's really selfish approach to life. And, I've never owned a gun, and I'm not the only one here, and I wasn't the only one there. And, I'll rely on the security forces or the police or whatever to protect me. I still have enough confidence in the state or at least in the private security of our neighborhood, but I'm a privileged guy, and I despair for the violence of the townships, but I think that has to be cleaned up by the communities themselves. It's just that here you've got a lot more reason for the violence than you do in America. I mean, the advanced countries are quite civil. I mean, there's very little gun violence in Japan, very little gun violence in Western Europe or in the British Isles.
So how would you address this question? I mean, others are making this argument, saying California, for example, they've got some of the most aggressive gun safety laws in America, but they've also been seeing mass shootings. How do you reconcile the two things?
They have, but in fact, if you look at the statistics, the 199 incidents this year are overwhelmingly in the red states of the South and the West, and they're not where everyone is armed. In Georgia, you could carry a gun to the airport, for crying out loud. And people would forget, and then they'd go through clearance, and they'd find guns, and they'd take it. But it's crazy. It's totally crazy. But the violence in New York has subsided, and in California, you're right. They're tough gun laws, but there's still crazy people around, and so occasionally you'll have a outburst of violence, but it's not as endemic as it is in Texas, for example.
Looking at what's supposed to be elections soon in America, is this going to be a big issue? Is this something that, for example, a Donald Trump could use for him to win the elections?
Well, it's very interesting that you raise that question, because I think guns and abortion are going to be forgive the pun, the trump cards of the Democrats going into the election. They've got other things going too, and a lot will depend on what the economy's doing, of course. It always does. But these are very local and very pressing issues, and as I'd said before, 70% of Americans want stricter gun laws, and the reason that they're not getting them is because the right-wing extremists have a hold on the primary system, and then through their leverage in the courts and in the Senate can able to block any kind of gun reform legislation, which has been floated several times. But if Biden wins by a large measure, he will be able to get through some gun management, and I think would benefit Africa in terms of having the Democrats continue in power. But the Africans, the diaspora has been vital to Biden, but he's not getting the help from Africa on Ukraine that he might.
Yeah, no, certainly. Well, I suppose that's another big conversation. That
a whole other subject. That's not for tonight.
Not for tonight. Prof, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Wits University International Relations, Professor John Stremlau.